Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure and honor to be here to share with you some of my views. I must say, very broad stroke views, as well as I only be able to paint the positive side, and there are lots of upside and lots of downside. I would leave most of the downside to the question period. I possibly would spend half an hour because the topic is so huge, and I have to be very brief and in very summative forms in most of the things. Well, I would first outline very briefly the Chinese success story of the past 30 years, in which China benefited from what I call the first global shift. And with that 30 years of reasonable success, China stands on a much higher platform to launch a second wave of development, which is being dubbed by me as the second global shift. The reasons for this second global shift and the basic features expect out of this second global shift and the global economy at the moment, as well as to be projected into the coming 10 years, 20 years or so, will also be mentioned in the third section. And then we look at China's strategic options and the urban scene in China in a very brief way, as China's economy and the global economy are expected to change very drastically. So first of all, China launched a new set of reforms after the gradual dying down of the Cultural Revolution and the internal party strife between Deng Xiaoping and the others. With the success of Deng and the opening and reform policies starting roughly 1978, China entered into 3 decades of reasonably stable political situation and massive economic growth. And that economic growth is basically internal and externally driven. Internally driven, China's need to develop to solve its economic backwardness, hangover since a number of decades of disruption, war, and political instability. Externally, it's because of several major global changes in technology and market situation, in which we see that the industrialized countries started to outsource from third world countries a number of important consumer goods. And other than finished products, the industrialized countries also outsource from many of these third world countries parts and components of the IT industry, the auto industry, and even the aircraft industry, air industry as well. And among the industrialized underdeveloped countries or third world countries, China stands to gain. And we can see in the labor-intensive segment, China accounts for sizable global production. And what's not shown here is even in air industry, auto industry, and the high-speed train, etc., China has been making parts and components for the big MNCs starting roughly 20 years ago. So China has been contributing to its own growth as well as the global growth because it's adding a major low-cost production platform to the global economy, to such extent that there has been one of the hot sort of economic exercise in important journals is how much China contribute to global economic growth. This is 2005, and if we look at the GDP in terms of purchasing power parity, then China contribute quite substantial 20% of global economic growth at that time. And at present, it's roughly estimated between 30 to 35%. In a nutshell, China's determinedness in terms of economics first and opening up to globalization forces through, which include FID, as well as access to global markets and importation of technology from outside had led to itself being the largest country that benefited from the first global shift. China has achieved rapid economic growth. For 30 years, the average annual growth rate 10%. Historically, record, because for a big economy like that, continuous growth for 30 years at high speed is unheard of. And second, the process of growth has driven more by external forces, endogenous driven, FDI and export push. And we can also identify another characteristic, which is labor intensive and low skill. The labor factor has been a tremendous important factor to drive its success in the first global shift. And the global size and potential of China itself has turned out to be a positive factor as well in keeping wages low and the labor willing to work and also high productivity at a given level of skill. And the last thing we have seen that has been worked itself out is the spatial concentration of the export push and concentrate growth areas around the coastal provinces, particularly in the three delta areas, the Yangtze Delta, the Pearl River Delta, and the Beijing, Tianjin, Tangshan Bay Area. That spatial concentration, of course, is a response to the need to export in huge bulk to overseas markets, and at the same time take in components, machinery that go in with these type of sort of out-processing activities, as some authors have described it in its nature. So we have seen that the relaxation of government control over labor migration have facilitated this, and the agricultural reform, etc. There are a lot of factors domestically that would make mobility of young and low-skilled labor to work in these global factories along the coast. You can see the urbanization growth is a response to this global participation of the Chinese economy in these 30 years. And the proportionate share of the transient population by provinces and cities. You can see in some cities like Shenzhen, the transient population or the non-permanent population is many times more than the local population. So in 30 years, we have a very interesting sociological phenomenon, and it's been off a lot of other studies in relation to hooplessness, crime, and local political participation, etc. We're not going to that. But the urbanization in the 30 years along the coast, along coastal China, has been basically due to this migrant of rural labor into coastal cities, and led to serious problems in many respects, and it's still a major government purpose, to remedy the situation by various sorts of reforms. And the three most concentrated areas that I mentioned is mapped out here. And it's induced in China in that time period not just city growth, but growth of mega urban regions. It's the big city with clusters of surrounding cities, and rural areas turned into semi-rural, semi-urban areas in the form of what Terry McGee called Dakota. So it's a huge regional urbanization, which is not pointy form, that is growth of individual city, but growth of a mass of urbanized plus semi-urbanized areas based on the global factory type of economy. Now that was the 30 years in the past. What's unfolding since year 2000, and particularly since 2008, the financial tsunami is what is being dubbed here as a second shift. Sorry about that, I pushed the wrong key. Yeah. Now, what I meant by the second global shift, because the last 30 years, China has been the global factory for low-skill, labor-intensive manufacturing. And in this new round of global shift, there will be two types of main sectors, that China will develop very rapidly, and given time, and we expect by 2020, China will likely play a leading role. Financial sector is number one, and number two is in the manufacturing sector. China will produce more consumable durables and capital goods and have them exported. And it's export both to the less developed countries and developed countries. So in some ways, it's changing the global flow of goods, or the trade patterns in the world would change. Now, what's behind this is, in short, China's acquired competitiveness. Some of them very sort of conventional wisdom, high savings rate, and sort of attachment towards the emphasis on the real economy versus the virtual economy. And the second important thing, China being such a large country, scale economy, has played out to an unexpected extent and in the world. This was particularly so when China became the largest economy. Whatever products China want to produce, and will concentrate its effort in R&D, have it commercialized, and have it sort of produced first round with the support of the domestic market. And when the product gets to be massively produced and unit costs cut down and become globally competitive, then China would market it to the world. And this is one of the scary regions of the competitiveness, the scale economy in China. There's been a lot of talk on the SOEs, state-owned enterprises, in and outside of China. But as far as I understand, the Chinese government would attach tremendous significance on key SOEs. They would be made. And it is these key SOEs that will pioneer some of the major sectoral growth within China. We've concentrated human resources and financial resources. And to some extent, that is where the American trade dispute to sometimes would unravel this unfair trade, because the SOEs are being supported and subsidized by the government in different sorts of ways. It depends how one looks at it, but the scale economy as an important economic consideration in terms of competitiveness has attained to such an extent in China that one couldn't find anywhere in the world. And the third is the large pool of labor. The cost and range of the labor is important. Sometimes we just look at the cost and not necessarily the range. The range of skill is important to maintain competitiveness in developing new products, in becoming efficient, and the mounting of them in the global market. We know that labor cost is also work on the basis of labor productivity. The cost here I refer to much more of the productivity. Same unit of productivity, the cost in China is still very low compared to most of the countries in the world, not to say the less developed countries. And the fourth point is organizational strength. The socialist market system spells something which is called centralization. There are a negative side of centralization, but there are positive side of centralization. Just take for instance, the four largest banks of China are 65% roughly directly owned by the central government, and with the retirement fund, etc., count together 85%. So compared to the United States, the government used to own nothing. But after the financial tsunami, because of the rescue program, the US government owns something. But with the promise that when things return to normal, this will be sold in the market. Now, my comparison is wanting us to think a little bit further. When the Chinese central government, Wu Jintao, makes a decision, the four banks will implement next day. Now, that is the timeliness and the efficiency of time in terms of decision making, major policies. Particularly in times of global economic turmoil, when vitality in the market is such that to some extent that kind of centralization, the organization strength, may sometimes be a critical factor. The last is the potential of the largest home market, which goes in with the scale economies as well. The home market has been used by China to attract FDI and transfer of technology. And the high-speed train, the making of the wide-body airplanes for the air passenger industry, China be able to get from Airbus and Boeing some of the critical technology because it trained the home market for the transfer of technology. And we are seeing that high-speed train is the same story. Chinese high-speed train technology originated from Europe and Japan. And now China, after 20 years being apprenticed to those MNCs, now already rival them in the global market. China is putting a new series to the global market starting 2014, the C series. Airbus is A series, Boeing is the B series, and the Chinese is C. C919 will be out in the global market 2016, and already the first batch of delivery is 236 planes. Already got 236 planes on order, and when we look at what Boeing sells or what Airbus sells in a year, it's probably 400. So this is the first stage. This is round number one in the air industry. I only expect in 15 years' time, China would be a major player even in the air industry. And in high-speed train, obviously, China now leads the world with 13,000 kilometers of high-speed train. And Chinese high-speed trains are started to run in 2006. We are now just 6 years from that. The first 3 years, all the high-speed trains are at a speed of 200 to 280 kilometers. But 50% of them, the last 3 years, the Chinese high-speed trains are at a speed of 300 to 380 kilometers. And the third generation would come in stream not too long from now. I expect 2020 they will be running and replacing some of the older high-speed trains. They run at speed of 400 to 500 kilometers. They are being test run already in some parts of the country, and we are seeing that the world is switching over to some extent intercity transport of high-speed train, and the global planning is that up to about 30,000 kilometers of high-speed train that Europe, South America, Asia, and North America have in plan to build. And it's expected that about 40% of the business, the building of this and the rolling stock would be the Chinese companies doing it. So in these two areas, which are not making of garment and toys or footwear, it's making of the future things. And why China be able to do that? It's because of this competitiveness and the forward planning and the sort of design behind the government plan. Now, we are not going to talk about too much of this. The Western economies are being in a very bad situation, and it seems to be continuing, and the growth expectation has been reasonably dim. We take 2009, of course, situation is changing a little bit, but not much along this general line that it's still in recession in the West. Here we look at some of the detailed data which I would just gloss over to point out just two important points. If we look at the BRIC countries, here I include the 4 BRIC countries, it's already leading the world in terms of GDP. And if we look at GDP as measured by purchasing power parity, then we'll see even the lead is enlarged. But however, this is just one way of measuring economies, GDP. It is not a good way, from my point of view, to measure the competitiveness, the real size of the economy. Classical economics teaches us that there are a number of factors of production. Money is one, financial resources is one, capital is one, land is another, labor the third, technology the fourth, market the fifth. And all these factors of production are not cancelling each other. If you have more capital, at the same time you have more labor, you're definitely more competitive than one with labor, no capital, or no capital, but then labor. Besides, these factors of production are mutually can mutually substitute each other. If you have a lot of labor, less capital, you use labor-intensive methods. If you have more capital and less labor, you use more machinery. So our economic journals never brought into play this whole set of factors of production. They just point to GDP. I don't know. I don't understand why. Where's the common sense? If we put this together, and if we add on an institutional factor, where you have scale economy, where you have quick decision, then the situation will be much more difficult and could be more sort of in line with reality. In fact, a lot have been said about China's rights and wrongs, but we have one surety, which is the country has picked up economically in the past 30 years. And the average person in the country has been well-fed, well-clothed, and can look forward to a job and improvement in the future. Now, on that, there must be some reason behind. The second thing I would look to pull out from this second table is the composition of the GDP in terms of the primary, secondary, and tertiary sector. And in China, you find the most exceptional case in that its secondary sector is larger than its tertiary sector. In UK, it's the opposite. The tertiary sector accounts for 80%, almost 80%, and some years 80% of the GDP. And the secondary sector very small, and the primary sector also very small. Now, the reason I put this table out is in most industrialized countries, there is an overexpansion of the tertiary sector. Overexpansion of tertiary sector to maintain growth by further expansion of the tertiary sector is kind of very difficult. It's maybe already beyond logic, because in the case of the of the UK, its financial sector has been so important because other financial sectors have not been risen. And we expect that in UK the situation will be very bad. And in case of the United States, the derivatives have been developed so much in the past 15 years, it's overdeveloped to some extent. Now with the contraction and more regulation, higher costs of that sector, it's not going to be competitive in future compared to some of the Asian markets. So we expect driving economic growth, just looking at the structure of the GDP itself, it's going to be very difficult for some of the countries. But for China, the tertiary sector has been underdeveloped. They are so much concentrated on manufacturing. If they are better in banking, insurance, marketing, logistics, they can even more efficiently market their products to the rest of the world. And that's what we are seeing today. The Chinese FDI start to grow only since 2007, and it's growing at a very rapid pace. Buying resources, oil, minerals, not just in Australia, but all the world, and investing in high-tech companies in North Europe and some in the United States. And we're seeing a lot of this M&A with the Chinese capital. And with the Chinese FDI going out, Chinese banks, insurance companies will also go out with them. And you will see many Chinese banks open shop in Sydney. The Bank of China, the Cultural Bank, and the Commercial Industrial Bank of China. You see more of these Chinese banks open shop, and with their increasing sort of customer believe that they're stable, they're good, then they may attract deposits from local banks. That's why I think this is an area which could be worthwhile watching. The Chinese emphasis on the tertiary sector development is for both the domestic and export-oriented sector to grow in future. The new global scenario, well, I just wind it off because I want more discussions and your reaction, and to learn more from you. We expect that in the coming few years, the downturn in the West will continue, and China would likely to fasten its pace in the financial sector and push along the line of internationalization of the renminbi. It started off just not too long ago, 2009. It's in 2.5 years. Bilateral trade denominated in renminbi is increasing very rapidly. Last year, 2011, I think about half of China's external trade was denominated in renminbi, and 92% of the transaction was being handled by banks in Hong Kong. So Hong Kong stands to gain in this first drive of the renminbi to become international currency, and we see more of this developing, and then there is more stress within China itself on local demand and the environment and the sustainable growth of the economy. In an area which we call new energy, China surprisingly also lead the world wind energy. In wind energy equipment, 1/3, at least 1/3, maybe my data is out there, because every year is changing very rapidly. China, of the 10 largest wind energy equipment producers of the world, or exporters of the world, Chinese firms top the first 5. Of the first 5, only 1 is non-Chinese firm in wind energy. In solar, same story. Chinese top 10 of the exporters in the world, Chinese firms occupy the first four. Now, in the league of banks in the world, the top 10 banks in the world now, the first 3 are Chinese. Whereas compared to 2005, not a single Chinese bank among the top 10. It's US bank, some Japanese banks, and some European banks. Now, of the first 10, China's banks 4, and the top 3, all Chinese. So things are changing in a way that one cannot expect, say, even 5 years ago. So we expect that China would move along the path of working on 2 legs. Labor-intensive production with high-tech, capital-intensive production would go hand in hand. And this tri-engine would be the export as well as domestic demand. And the trend of deepening technology and value added is quite obvious. Now, against this possibility, China obviously has a lot of worries. A balanced global market, put in a nutshell, and I will just highlight as the last part of the presentation the Chinese strategical options. First, we look at the key issues, major concerns of China: energy source and security. And in order to be able to sort of resolve these two, China pushed the line of peace and harmony in its foreign relations and in economic relations, fair trade and development. Of course, these are simplistic representation. How to actually carry this out and be agreed to requires a lot of tech and sort of deep thinking. The oil security, this outline Chinese concerns, where the oil mainly import from, and the sea lane that are critical to these, and how the Chinese government plan to circumvent part of the limitations of the restricted sea lane in terms of pipelines going out to reach the supplies in a more efficient and more secure manner. So this is one presentation. It's going to be affecting China's international relations with related countries. Again, these mainland Chinese scholars have mapped this out. The military blockade, they call, of U.S. Air bases circumventing the Chinese territory. So we conclude here that there are a few things expected in the horizon. The renminbi going to be a major hard currency. The time horizon is different from different authors. The closest estimation by some authors is 2013, that's next year, but I don't believe it. Maybe 2020 is the year with most people agree on. And China is working hard to forge new policies that will pave the way for this. The SOEs and large private enterprises will globalize, and we are seeing this, and they will lead to the Chinese financial sector going out internationally as well. With a change of finance, share and stocks will become major means for fundraising of Chinese enterprising. At the moment, it's not. At the moment, 80% of their finance is coming from bank loans as well as internal saving, whereas the stock exchange finance is less than 20%. Now, with a change of mode of financing of the Chinese enterprises, their economic strength would suddenly increase by twofold, threefold. The debt would mean something. And the 4 point, Chinese investment corporations already formed a few years ago, and it is rivaling the largest sovereign fund in the world. Put together, they are the largest. They are the largest. And I always like to use this as an indicator. For Chinese sovereign funds, whenever they invest $1, they can reap $2 or $3. Compared to Singapore or Saudi Arabia, they have sovereign funds. For them, they are not 100% sort of free in the decision making. We have seen examples. I'm not going to call them. During the financial crisis, these two funds have been asked to purchase, to rescue some of the companies in the United States. And they know very well investing would be not doing them good, but they have to support the friendly nation. And the Chinese could leverage its sort of domestic market and its political strength. So for $1 investment outside, it can work as $2, depending on circumstances. So there's a lot of this very tricky play of considerations that the Chinese investment corporations would be a major force in the global economy in the coming future. We have mentioned major banks in China already globalized, and there will be more of this and faster track through M&A. More free trade flows of private funds from China, and the Chinese citizens are allowed to participate in the global economy. This is already coming in a small way, but will explode into major flow, given the institutional and the policy infrastructure have been put into play, and people expect China as a source of investment funds in the future will be very promising in a matter of say 3 to 5 years. And a new trend of export of high-value products, as I mentioned. This is Chinese automobile industry rank order. You can see in a matter of 10 years, China shot up from rank 7 to rank number 1. In fact, 9 years. And the production of about 2 million to 18 million cars. China is making 19 million cars. the largest auto producer in the world and the largest market in the world as well, and selling 18 million. Last year, China export roughly about 1 million cars in the global market. EU and Brazil, the two largest concentrations, and it's expected that the Chinese auto export would rise. And follow with the auto export, obviously, would be the bank and insurance company. So things are sort of changing so fast. I will stop here. All I have said, macro, and I may also plead guilty to be positive. And I welcome your comments, and I have not touched on the negative issues. I think it would possibly take too long to strike a balance. Thank you very much.